What we hope for today is that you will walk away with 1 to 5 skills that you can absolutely use tomorrow that are no prep. You don't have to get materials together. You are just using your everyday speech materials, but you're taking them to a new level and you're seeing a new depth with them that perhaps you haven't seen before. So, and if you can do that and find that new depth, we really believe that your students will then find a new depth of their social skills as well. We love our autism community. This is a really fun day for us. We talk about you all the time. We talk about all the things that you bring to us in terms of your feedback that you give and the emails and customer support chats and things like that that let you know what you're looking for and what you need for this year. And we hope that you have felt supported by Everyday Speech, especially in the very difficult school year that you've had. So we are talking about a playbook today. And so the whole day is about sports. And so the concept that what you drill over and over will be what your students can do. So I wanted to, before we talk about these great plays that we have for you, I wanted to convince you that your main job as head coach, for you to think about your main job as head coach. And the reason is because I really saw my teaching and my relationship with my students increase the most when I started thinking of myself as a coach. I started thinking of game day as every real life experience my students had. So game day is every moment on a bus, everything that happens in recess, in class, at their kitchen tables with their family. Game day is all of real life. And practices were then all of their time with me, all those lessons that I was preparing so that their game day could be ready and that they were ready for that other team that was going to be coming at them, all those social skills that were going to be coming at them in that moment. I loved how it shifted my thinking as a therapist and really pulled me in as their coach and someone who was really protecting them in their game and helped me think about all the areas that I needed to really teach so that they could perform better in real life. Okay. So you have a couple of jobs as a coach. Number one, I think, is to know the game of social skills. And I really think that Everyday Speech hopefully has helped you excel at that. I believe that Everyday Speech is successful because of the why and how it was created. And so I'm going to introduce Brittany and Cal Brunel to you all now because they really tell their story best of how and why it was created.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again so much for joining us. So we thought it'd be nice just to tell you a little bit about the inspiration and history behind the company. So I'm a speech pathologist and I started working in a high school. That was my first job after college. And I had, an increasing amount of students who had social skills needs on my caseload. And at the time, I started to think about these high school students and what motivates them. And I noticed right away with technology, with the iPad, you get that buy-in from the student. And for a lot of different types of students, you get it because it's cool and it's fun. You get it because you can create things that maybe you couldn't have created otherwise in the therapy room. So again, for so many reasons, our students are drawn to technology. And then I also was reading more and more about video modeling. And the evidence tells us that that is effective. It's an evidence-based practice. But I thought, how can I make this practical? It's really not feasible for me to be creating my own videos every lesson or for every student. And it's also not feasible to find the perfect material you need on YouTube or on the computer. I'm sure you can relate to that. So I would come home and I talk to Cal and I would think about, well, what can we do? I'm seeing this need out there. I'm seeing the success my students have. If you do film them doing a skill, they're so much better and they're making these games so much faster. So we really tried to work together. So Cal can tell you a little bit about how the company started.
Yeah, so I have a background in basically software and technology consulting. And so always wanted to do something for myself. And one day, Brittany and I were sort of looking at the apps that were available. I'm sure most of you know sort of how much the iPad changed the game, as Brittany mentioned. And we just saw what we felt were sort of I don't know. I guess you would call them like one-offs. Like they delivered value for one session, but it wasn't really lasting. Like you couldn't really use it all the time. And sort of a light went off, and we decided to create an app together. And so we released our first app. We're coming up on the 7-year anniversary, which is kind of crazy, of Let's Be Social, which some of you might have used. So that was our first sort of foray, and then through a lot of customer feedback and Brittany as well leading the charge, we did decide that video is the way to go. And so that core audience that we serve with Let's Be Social. which, was an app based on essentially social stories, really, is still our core audience today. We've made so many kind of little gains and improvements over the years that, it's a totally different product, but it's still aimed at the same audience. And so kind of over the years, we added the video modeling, and we continue to add new videos every single month of the school year. We just did a video shoot for our first ever pre-K shoot in October. So that was really fun. And yeah, we added a whole bunch more supports like the web games, the digital or what started as printable activities, and then sort of what COVID accelerated for us as well was turning those to make them digital as well, so you could play them on a Zoom call like this. And then we also released something we're super excited about, which is Everyday Speech World. So if you haven't played it, it's like a very much like an interactive, as close as you could get to like practicing a real conversation with maybe a safety net that you might not have in a real life conversation. And then what we really wanted to do was wrap that all into a really easy to use curriculum that you could get value from in, your first 5 minutes using the product, and gave our educators some of that support. When we're dealing with social skills and social emotional learning, there is a bit more ambiguity in terms of there's no set syllabus. It's not like some other subjects where there's a textbook that you follow. And so what we found is we could really help educators by kind of giving them that rough framework that they could adapt to each one of their learners. So that was a big step for us. And then just moving forward, we're really continuing to hoping to push on that interactivity piece that we launched with Everyday Speech World. And we're really thinking about how we can turn a video experience from a passive experience, you're just watching a video, to an active experience where you're engaging with what's on the screen. So whether that's a game or a video or a merge of the two, those are all sort of ideas that we're thinking about. And additionally, how we can further leverage technologies to meet a whole wide range of learners, whether they're maybe, they're visual or auditory, or they're readers or non-readers. And so those are all things that we're definitely thinking about. And we continue to create new videos, new content all the time. And so we're always super open to feedback on specific videos, features you'd like to see. Some of our best videos have come from really specific user stories about, I just had a student do this. It would be great if you made a video on that. So we get those types of inquiries all the time, and we're super open to them. But yeah, we're super excited for the future of Everyday Speech, and we're glad to have you.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that we really, really love our community. We love being in touch. So please, if you haven't yet, get in touch with us. As Kel mentioned, it could be as small as a video idea. People come to us with feature ideas, product ideas. It can really be anything. Just, if you find a need for your students, parents, the communities you're serving, just let us know. 'Cause that's what we're really striving towards. Just, building out the features that everyone needs to make your job easier.
And yeah, contact information is at the end of the presentation, so don't worry about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Brunels. As you can tell, the Brunels never stop thinking of new ideas. It is a great thing. So back to our slides. Number 2 is to coach the plays. No coach expects any individual to perform well in a game if they've only practiced something once or twice. So the idea of this playbook is that you're really setting up drills so that your students are practicing and rehearsing those new thought processes over and over in that same way, so that they become automatic for them. And just the same that a coach would use those trusty drills that are fundamental to a game, we're using those same plays over and over that are fundamental to thinking about other people. And then number 3, I love this one. This is kind of my personal favorite. Big game changer in my practice was really tell your students why. Said no coach ever, I'm not going to tell you why we're doing this drill. So once I really started kind of thinking myself as a coach and coaching those plays, I really felt like I had to develop whys for everything. So if I was trying to get a student to sit with other people at lunch, I had to tell him why. If I was trying to get a student to ask how the admin assistant was doing before he asked for his teacher's mail, I felt like I had to give him a why. And that was made a big difference in our relationship and made a big difference in my students' performance. So I also felt like what it allowed me to do was have more vulnerable talks with my students, so that when things went wrong for them, their social tries didn't always go well, I could be someone they could go to and we could talk that out and we could rewind that together. And so I'm going to show you now is what that rewinding kind of looks like in materials. So this is Relationship Ruler. And what's happening here is these two students are good friends. Relationship ruler shows that we act a different way depending on how well we know someone. So you can see that they're close, they're buddies, they touched. And right here is the moment for an advanced student I'm on a capture, that this student now has to start thinking about someone else in those few moments that they're walking. And this is a more advanced skill. I wouldn't do this for a student who was just doing this for the first time, but I do want to show a student when you embed that social thinking about other people. And so now here he is meeting with a student who he's not that good of a friend with. So now I'm going to hand this over to Casey, who is a speech pathologist with Everyday Speech. She's a fantastic therapist and she's an excellent writer, and she has written many of the videos that you see coming out this coming year.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, so today we are going to talk a little bit about how to continue with the sport analogy to be a team player. So this idea of collaboration, how can we really use collaboration to our advantage by working with, the people that are important to our student, the people that are in our students day to day. So here's a little bit of an overview. So that who, like I just said, your student's team. So this should always include parents. Those are a vital part of the team. They know your student better than anyone. But as well, it also needs to include teachers, including gen ed teachers, as well as special ed teachers, and then other related services like PT, OT, and administrators. I feel like a lot of times, I often did this, that I forgot to include administrators on the skills that we were working on with our students. They sit in the IEP meetings, but oftentimes administrators like principals are also the people that have our students when they're having a hard day or, having some difficult behaviors at school. They end up in the principal's office. So including them and what you're working on and what's working for your student is really, really vital. And then why are we going to do this? Why is collaboration important? So really, at the end of the day, collaboration promotes a student's generalization of skills across environments and contexts. And especially with social skills, this is so important. Many times I had the student that would come to my therapy room and they were rock stars. They had the skill down. We could hold a solid conversation back and forth. But then as soon as that student is at recess or even just in their classroom, they're having a hard time. Their teacher's coming to your door, knocking and saying, hey, this student really is not interacting with his peers. He's having a hard time just having age-appropriate conversations. And so that's why this collaboration piece of involving all the stakeholders is so important, so that student can not only be successful in your room, but out in the school environment, as Carrie would say, game day. All across their day, we want them to be successful with these social skills because it really does integrate into just about every aspect, as we know. How? So this is that bridge between what we know we should be doing and how we're going to make it happen. One of the ways I really love to collaborate in the school building is co-leading groups. So especially if you're sharing a goal, it's so easy and nice if you can do a group together with whoever that person may be. I know some of my most favorite and successful groups included a group that I led with my special ed teachers, my OTs. Whenever possible, we really like to take advantage of that time and tackle that goal together. And then another really easy way to collaborate is through goal posters. So I'm going to show you on the platform how you can find them and when to use them. So we'll just play this little video here. Here's a view of the platform. So that should look familiar. If you go to our full curriculum, you'll see all of the skills here. I'm just going to choose one to show you where these goal posters live, but many of our skills have these. So I'm going to click on basic conversation skills, and we'll go to conversation drivers and stoppers, our concept about maintaining a conversation. And over here on the right-hand side, you'll see the visual support. So if you click on that, you'll see all the visual supports that we have for this concept. And I'm looking for right now is the goal poster feature. So that's this one right here. And if I download it, it really just gives you a nice visual representation of the concept and the goal you're working at. And it's a perfect one-off to give to teachers, to send home with parents, especially, to clue parents in on the language you're using at school and what they can be doing at home. Parents often have a really big buy-in with that, and it's so easy to do, especially if you just want to print it or for your tech savvy, you can also use email. So these goal posters are huge and just one way that you can use everyday speech to start collaborating tomorrow. So I'm going to throw it back to Carrie, who's going to take it away with our playbook.
I also love goal posters. Changed everything. Okay, so let's talk about this playbook. What we practice, we become. And mastery does come one skill at a time. So what are these 3 skills? We want to, the first I would say is to switch roles in role playing. We want our students to learn how to take other people's perspectives more than any other skill. At some point in my career, I adopted a habit that no social skills session was a good session without some sort of role playing. But then I discovered that the real golden nugget there was that the key was in the switching. So first be the teacher, then be the student. Be the one who lost, then be the one who won. This is how it feels to be the parent waiting in the car. This is how it feels to be the kid getting their shoes on. So it really is that switching that does that theory of mind teaching for you. And I think of it as that switching roles and role playing does for perspective taking the same as meditation does for living in the present moment. And I just really feel like I saw my students take that on the road and use that all the time in their thinking. The second play in our playbook is to teach students to plan multiple solutions. We know our students on the spectrum have a difficult time when their first plan goes awry, and that they had one plan in their mind and they're holding on to it, and that life never really accommodates that one plan. So one of the best things we can do for them is to really expect, tell them to expect, teach them to expect, to reroute lots and lots of times on their way to their goal. So for me, this looks like just tacking in a conversation that becomes a very routine conversation between me and my students. And that's, let's talk about what's going to go wrong. It's what I think of as our plan B conversation. And so they might say one and I might say one. And so we just are constantly building those different things that could go wrong and it's expanding there and what we're going to do about it. Third is to press pause on what we do and say when we have our emotions running high. And that just gives ourselves time to think and figure out what to do or say. And this is powerful stuff. It's also really hard. We know how hard it is because it's hard for adults. This is the kind of skill that's in marriage counseling and family counseling. This is the kind of skill that really changes kids' lives and families' lives. So, but it's hard to do because it's really hard to feel comfortable on that whole ride of the emotion and waiting it out until it subsides. So, teaching kids that they can do this at any time and that it's really a protection from rash decisions that really don't help anybody. Okay, so if you're someone that really does all 3 of these things, we have 2 more for you. But let's first talk about what it sort of looks like to apply those in the materials that you're going to use tomorrow and next week. Okay, so if you're going to be role playing and doing some of that switching roles, a part of at the end of all of our videos is a role playing opportunity. So you can ask kids their application question, their inferring question, and now you can have them role play. And then now we're going to just try to switch that. So students get to be various roles in that role play. All right, another way is if you have any worksheet, any of our materials, our packets in front of you, there are so many opportunities tucked into there to really kind of, maybe if you're not going to get into a formal role play, but just your question sort of gets them thinking about standing in someone else's shoes like they do here. So for this one, they need to kind of think about what those other students are thinking and feeling based on what the, to fill in that cartoon. Planning multiple solutions. This was printed and laminated in my office. It sometimes went with kids on their way into their classroom. And so I'm directing your attention to number 3, coming up with at least 3 solutions. So that really kind of becomes part of their problem solving sequence and their mind. And for those younger students, my first graders, I was really always aiming for 2. They're just really small to try to really get in 3. But then as soon as 2nd grade and 3rd grade hit, I could really get 3 if we had done it enough times. All right. This is Everyday Speech World. So this is an example of how I might use this material and help a student plan for multiple solutions. So in this, you've got Kiara kind of stating her problem to you very directly. It's very personal. This is why we love Everyday Speech World. And I might pause here because I want students to kind of think about what their solution could be. So if students had maybe even gone through like the basic level of Everyday Speech World, and now I wanted them to generate their own answer, I would maybe even pause the video here and have them generate their answer before they got to see the other answers come up. So I always love using the ability to stop video where I want it to capture the ability that I want. Okay, for press pause, I feel like that is interspersed in almost every single one of our materials, because we are like in change the channel here, we see down here in number 4, give yourselves time to feel better before we act. That's just such a common strategy for us, is to stop. Maybe it's breathe. I almost am struggling to come up with a single skill box that we have in our hundreds of videos that doesn't have something like that in there, especially when you're talking about regulation and behavior. Again, in our activities, that pressing pause comes into play when we're talking about doing this kind of activity. So if I've got this up on my smartboard and my students are swiping through and picking whether this is a calm body behavior or not calm body behavior, this is a great opportunity where I'm talking about you could open and close your binder. That might help you. And I had a student say, well, that's what helps me, so that's what I'm going to do. But this is now an opportunity for me to say, but do we get to choose behaviors and relaxing behaviors that harm others or bother others? And then kind of discuss that. So now I want to introduce, we have a great guest speaker for you. Kimberly Ann Wilson is a speech pathologist. And Kimberly Ann, would you mind unmuting right now? And can you share some tips on how you use everyday speech and how it helps you, and maybe perhaps how you use it to collaborate?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I first wanted to say I was just so delighted at your introduction and the benefits that you shared with everyday speech, and the value that it has had and the impact that it's had with me is supporting the families that I have supported at the high school level, which is what my focus was. I think that one of the really important aspects that we have to remember when we're working with everyday speech is I always think of the iceberg and what is on the top and what is on the bottom. And so I kind of use this description as an illustration of what everyday speech means to me. And so the iceberg represents for me everyday speech. What my role is, and the other pieces that I have to put into it are equally as important, especially the considerations that I have to have when I'm working with my learners. So it's important to, collaboration with family, teachers and paraprofessionals, as what has already been shared, is of vital importance. And the reason for that is because our students hear different language in different environments. In the school setting and in our home settings, we have different cultural makeup. There's a school culture, there's a classroom culture, there's a different culture that goes on in the cafeteria or recess versus what happens in art class versus what happens in a science class. The language that is used is different. Sometimes teachers set up the classrooms differently. Some classrooms are set up in groups. Some classrooms are set up with individualized desks where you don't really have the opportunities to have the interactions that you would like. And so you really have to take all of these nuances into account when you are trying to work with everyday speech. So, I look at everyday speech and the platform as the direct go-to. It gives you everything, your data, what you need to look at, the supports for videos. But what we have to do as far as implementing this platform is we have to do some more work, just in order to make sure that we are aligning our expectations at a place where learners can meet those expectations for demonstrating the social skills. And I have a couple of examples, that I'd like to share. In using everyday speech, taking others' perspectives was one that we were working on with a learner, and really trying to get that learner to understand the level of reaction that they were given when they weren't happy with what other students were saying. And we came up with this dynamic program using everyday speech that we thought would be wonderful. Called the parent in to review what we had put together. And on some of our ideas that we had, the parents said, well, they do this at home. And so, of course, our response is, well, we don't see that in this environment. And what we found out is, well, that's not how we say it. That's not the language we use when we do it. This is what we say. And so we changed everything around, started using language that was kind of, that aligned with language that was familiar, that prompted the skill sets that we wanted to see. And the carryover was amazing. And, it made me really reflect on how important it is to really consider, the family dynamics and how things are presented in that realm. The other piece that I think is really important to take into consideration is maturation. The everyday speech is wonderful in that it represents elementary and high school, and it gives wonderful, wonderful depictions of age group diversity in ethnicity and culture, which is one of the wonderful things that I really thought was amazing about it, because a lot of the videos before everyday speech came into my life, and I would go through YouTube, etc., would not represent what I truly wanted to have presented for my students. So I was able to use that, but the piece that was really important was that as my students matured, I could go through everyday speech and I could find videos and skill sets that aligned with where they were, with the language that they used, and to provide increasing opportunities to even increase the vocabulary with taking perspective as opposed to a lower level kind of aspect of whole body listening. The vocabulary as well was something that I could also bring into the home, because sometimes parents needed some help with how do you change that language? How do you make that language more mature as your learner is growing? And especially in schools too, teachers sometimes tended to use language that was not moving forward or higher level type of language to really help support some of those skill sets that we know that our students need. So it's imperative, as was shared earlier, to really have those collaborative conversations, to look at the language that's used, to be aware that everyday speech is a standard American English dialect platform. What does that mean for the different families that you're working with? How does that look? How is that different within the classrooms that you're in, within the families that you're working with? How is that different for a family who just came from Japan versus a family who may come from Jamaica who speaks Patois? What do all of these things that we're introducing, how can we make them meaningful and individualize them to the needs of the student? So in using this, I encourage, to take that extra step that I feel is needed to really make everyday speech the dynamic and amazing platform that it already is, but just adding that perspective on really honing in on the collaboration, the language, the culture, the environment is of utmost importance. And so I hope that in what I'm sharing with you, that you will be able to take some of that information in consideration and use it tomorrow, as is the goal of our presentation today.
Thank you so much, Kimberly Ann. I love what you touched on. I love that you talked about different cultures. That is something we spent so much time as a company talking about for a couple months now, and we're really excited about where we're moving in those directions with a new equity council that we're putting together, and just the new directions that we're going. you touched on so many things that we talk about in our meetings all of the time.
Mhm.
We love that familiar language. That is a topic we never get tired of talking about. It is so important to us that everyday speech becomes that. We know that students are going to make changes when they have a familiar language in an entire school building, and when you've got that collaboration between home and school. So I love that you said that. Yeah, thank you so much for everything that you prepared for us.
You're welcome.
So if you're doing those already, here's a couple more for you. And that is predictions and self-talk. For me, predictions just looks like simple questions that I tuck into lots of little moments that are already my session. It's like this regular question that's always there. So I might stop a video and say, what do you think she's going to do? And any type of question I can ask that says, let's think one step ahead. I want to go for that futuristic sequential thinking. And then self-talk is really following the research that's pointing us toward that on the spectrum, it is really seems to be difficult for students to really have that self-talk as a habit, and we can really infuse that. So I want to develop scripts of how self-talk sounds and really be modeling it, talking myself through steps of losing a game. We say it out loud. Helping students do that out loud so that we're trying to give them another way to feel in control of their emotions. So if we're talking about making predictions, I think a lot of our activities really are conducive for those predictions. Here we have a game, guess what's happens next game. And we've got the predictions here already because we've stopped the video and now we've given your student an opportunity to ask or to think about that prediction of what will happen next. And then self-talk is, all these thought bubbles, all these things where we can create that thought bubble of what are you thinking right now? And that's really modeled in so many of our videos and always will be because it's such an important skill. I now am really excited to introduce you to Lauren. Lauren is someone that I just really cherish as a member of our everyday speech community. We met her in March, right when COVID was kind of starting, and we were talking to your district, and Lauren really uses everyday speech in unique ways for her students, and she has such an eye for what her students need and how she can use our materials to work for her students. So I am just so excited to sit back and learn from you, Lauren, with what's in your playbook.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you for having me here today. As Carrie just said, my name is Lauren Dolcemascolo, and I'm a speech and language pathologist working in the New York City Department of Education. I work with middle school and high school students on the autism spectrum. I've been working in District 75 in New York City, which is a self-contained district. All of our students are self-contained. And I've been working with them for 13 years, primarily on social pragmatic skills. All of my students have a diagnosis of autism, and social pragmatics is really what they're struggling with. I've been using everyday speech with my students since October of 2019, and I've seen a huge, huge leap in their communication skills. Collaboration between all professionals, as they were saying earlier, has been one of the keys to making this work. And it is also one of the missions in the mission statement of my school. So before the pandemic, my school followed 100% push-in model of therapy. So I've always worked really closely with the classroom staff to incorporate the speech and language into every lesson that we did. We used everyday speech primarily during the social skills period, but the videos align with many of the other lessons across a variety of subjects. So we use them for ELA a lot too, following directions. When students were in crisis, we would pull up some of the lessons for the calming of the body. So I was using that in school, and then fast forward to March, all of the schools are shut down, and we were thrust into a world of virtual therapy, which was really hard for all of us because we were just so used to working in a team with everyone. When I'm doing a speech therapy session with one child and OT is doing her session with another child, and we have the PT in the room, we're all special ed teachers, the paraprofessionals. So we were really used to working together, and now we were apart, and we had to figure out how to make this work. We were really forced to adapt everything that we were doing. not only did we have to adapt the way that we were performing our speech therapy, but we were in the homes. So we were working with the students, but we were also working with their at-home support system, whether that be their parents or an aide in some of the cases for my children. They had respite care workers trying to help them with their therapy sessions. So everyday speech has helped me build the relationships with the parents and the aides. And many parents have reported to me up until now the progress that they've seen in their children since the introduction of everyday speech back in October. I'd like to share some of the testimonials today about actual students on my caseload. So first, back in May, at the end of one of my speech sessions with a student, she was unable to initiate a conversation, remain on topic, take turns, body language, keep herself calm. Her mother came on the video chat to tell me about how she was doing at home. Mom reported that her daughter was now initiating conversations with her neurotypical twin sister, staying on the same topic for multiple turns and waiting her turn to speak. This was huge progress for this student. And her mother said she felt like her daughter learned so much from the video modeling and all of the tools I had emailed her. So I had always emailed her the goal posters or the videos that we worked on during session, the supplemental materials I sent for homework. So they were really using all of the materials that I was sending them. And she said that she attributed a lot of her progress to everyday speech. They helped the student participate in conversation within the home setting, not just school or therapy. The growth in her communication skills is just one example of what I've seen with my students that I'm currently working on everyday speech with. I've worked closely with the classroom teachers and sent them visuals from the site as well. So to make sure that we're all using the same language and incorporating the skills into their lessons for carryover and generalization. And all of the teachers within my school building that I'm currently working with have reported how much it has helped them run lessons, especially during remote learning, because now all they have to do is, while they're sharing their screen, pop up one of those visuals, the conversation stoplight, for example, when they're not taking their turn or they're not having a quiet mouth and waiting their turn, the teacher will just pop up the conversation stoplight. She doesn't have to say anything. And then that student will then quiet their mouth and remember the skills that they learned in speech. I've also paired up with one teacher virtually, and we are co-teaching using everyday speech during the social skills class. During one of the classroom reflections, all of the students named social skills as their favorite class because they're now learning how to make friends and talk to friends and family, which is huge because as you guys know, students with autism have such a hard time making those connections with their friends and family. And so for them to be able to verbalize and tell us that this was their favorite part of the day because they wanted to make friends was really eye-opening for us. And it has gone far beyond the classroom. It has also helped strengthen relationships in the homes. So this past Tuesday, just a few days ago, I was working with another group of students on the spectrum, and we are working on the think it or say it activity because a lot of my students have a very difficult time knowing what to say and when to say it. So after my session was over, the student's mother popped in and had reported that she took the goal poster that I had sent her. She printed it on actual poster size paper multiple times and had them all over the house. She put them in her dining room. It was in her child's bedroom and all of the places within the home where the family gathers. So not only did the program help the student know what to say and when to say it, but it also helped her family members to take a moment, and think before they speak, because sometimes even as adults, like Harry was saying earlier, even all of us, we have an issue with that sometimes. So it was really nice to see that the mom had said that it was helping the family relationship as well. I've had so much success with this program. The kids truly enjoy watching other kids that they can relate to. That is one thing that my students have said too. They can relate to the characters in these videos. They're seeing characters that look like them, that act like them. So they've used the video modeling and they really enjoy that. The parents have reported that they also enjoy the videos and love that they are now able to have conversations with their children, something that they weren't able to do before the introduction of everyday speech. My data tracking has also proved the growth in my students that I'm currently working with. I can't say enough about this program. I'm so glad that I stumbled across everyday speech because it has definitely become one of the best tools that I have in my therapy toolbox. It has strengthened the relationships that I have with the other professionals working with the students and also the families. We now are all on the same page. We're using the same language when referring to skills we want to see from the students. So for example, The example I gave earlier, use your conversation stoplight when the child is having a hard time taking turns. And we know that is really important for students on the autism spectrum for carryover and generalization, that they're hearing the same thing across different environments. So it's not only happening in my speech bubble, it is also happening in their classroom. It is also happening in their home. It's happening, pre-COVID when they were out in the supermarket. So that was, it's really important for the generalization of skills to have us all on the same page using the same language. Parents love that they can now see exactly what their child is working on when I send those gold posters, the supplemental materials and the videos. And so I just want to thank you guys again for having me here today. I'm glad I got the opportunity to share my experiences with you guys. And I hope that everyone on this call tonight has as much success with this program, especially in the collaboration and building of relationships with your students and your families, as I have had up until now. So thank you guys for having me.
Lauren, that was great. Thanks. I think we're all feeling like we wish like we worked with you right now. So now I would like to introduce you back to Britt. I'd like Britt to come back on because she's got some really fun things to tell you about that are all coming soon and what you can expect coming this year and next year for Everyday Speech.
Thanks, Carrie. And thank you, Lauren. That was incredible just to hear how you're using everyday speech, how it's helped your practice. And just for us, really, really heartwarming just to think about the students and the gains that they're making. So thank you for sharing so much.
Yeah, I love that social skills is their favorite class. That's awesome.
That's incredible. Just we're going to share that with the whole everyday speech team. But yeah, and it makes us think, we have high hopes for what's coming soon for everyday speech. And that is, can tell you before we get to the next slide. It's social emotional learning for every student. So for any learner, no matter their abilities and levels, we just think we've heard, actually, I can give you a little bit of history. We've heard for a couple of years now, professionals in the building seeing everyday speech videos, maybe hearing about the success the students have made or catching a glimpse of a video themselves and saying, well, this looks really cool and fun. Can we share this with our entire class? And as you guys know, these videos that we've made have been, very specific for a specific audience with our students who have autism primarily or social skills challenges. So now we've made video lessons and accompanying materials that are appropriate for any student, as I mentioned. And this would be an SEL curriculum that follows the CASEL core competencies of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationships, and decision-making. And so we're bringing this to your guys' attention. One, because we feel like you are our champions of everyday speech, but also because you're your students' cheerleaders. And it's interesting that we started this initiative over a year ago, so before the pandemic hit, but now it's really brought to life, I think, in education, just how important social emotional learning is for every single student. So this video is just a really quick preview of what the curricula looks like. And so again, we're taking the video lessons that you guys know and love. We put them into a curriculum that's standard week by week. So you have a lesson, a video lesson, and an accompanying follow-up materials to go with it. And again, taking those videos, but just making modifications so they're more appropriate for the general education use in a classroom. And yeah, that's really what it looks like. So if you guys are interested in learning more, we have information up on our website, and you can always email us to learn more at info@everydayspeech.com. As we mentioned, we really, truly love to engage and hear from you guys. So please, anything you have questions about, any success stories, as Lauren shared with your students, we really, truly would love to hear about them.
Yeah, and one thing we really are hoping to do with the general ed curriculum as well is continue to push on something that Lauren mentioned, which is just that shared vocabulary. And so now everybody in an entire building can kind of be on the same page and using that same language. And regardless of diagnosis, students we feel, SEL is the foundation of every single learner. And we just feel that like the more students we can impact, the better.